Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of In My Opinion. My name is John.
My name is Celeste.
Yes, welcome to another episode of In My Opinion, especially to my YouTube peeps. What up, people? What up?
What up, everybody? And as you guys can see, John is in a very new environment. He is in a new
Yes.
place right now, which is actually today's episode topic. But
Correct.
actually,
Which I'm actually in the bung of Squid Game.
Yes, 100%. That's why he's wearing a Squid Game costume right now. But basically, today we'll be talking about moving out. But before we get into it, do follow us on
Yes.
Instagram and follow our Telegram channel. Follow us on Twitch or Overthink SG. It's easier for you guys. Just search Overthink SG, you guys can find us. And basically,
Yep.
to get updates about where we go live, there'll be for Telegram and Instagram updates of when a new episode comes out. And for Twitch right now, we are streaming. We basically just bought chicken costumes and John bought a cow costume. And we're going to cook
Yes.
in real life soon, and we'll be streaming it. So you guys can definitely come and check us out, and just have fun with us. With that, John,
Yeah.
is there any more that you want
And
to
that will
plug?
be happening. No, not much right now. So, ladies and gentlemen, please forgive my really scuffed setup. This home is still a work in progress. You know, for those of you that are watching for the first time on YouTube, I have just shifted to a new place.
Yes, and which
If
is
you all care, that's why it's like that.
I
And while I'm
mean,
wearing some kind of Squid Game looking stuff, well, I came back from a shoot with Squid Game. That's about it. Okay.
I mean,
Let's
people
go
will
into
probably
today's
care
episode.
about the moving out thing because they clicked onto this, you know what I mean? So basically, John moved out. We said this 1,000 times already, but John moved out. But we were thinking about doing an episode today to kind of like have him to go through his experience of moving out, especially because like I think to a lot of people moving out is like very like just take your shit and move out, lah. Like
Yeah,
like
yeah.
pack your bags and then you go there and then like peace out, have fun, life is good. But in
Yeah.
between the peace out, have fun, life is good, there's a lot of life is not so good. And I'm sure John will be able to shed light onto some of the things that he probably didn't consider were things until he had to move out. So
Yeah, and also like
Yeah.
like I would say that let me just disclaim.
yes,
I'm not an expert here.
yes,
Okay, I'm not the authority on how moving out is like, and not the best at giving advice. But I'm just gonna share some of my experiences and like some things that I've learned. And I do understand that it may not be everything, especially for other people who have been long-time homeowners as compared to myself and people who have moved out way earlier. My suggestion is that do engage with us about this conversation. If you have other tips that could help someone out, someone who was like me a few months back out, right? Please leave in the comments below. And we always encourage these kind of conversations.
Yep. And with that, I think we can start off with really enough, not the moving out, but like the pre-moving out part.
Yes.
So I think
Yes.
like what made you even want to move out in the first place? It sounds like a very interview thing, but I think this is how it's gonna
Yeah.
go. But what made you want to move out?
I think the first thing that made me consider moving out was the fact that because in Singapore especially, I have very differing views from my very traditional Asian parents.
Okay.
And
sure.
as a result of that, right, at home it has reached a point where it's very difficult to develop and grow in that sense. You know? And a lot of things come at the expense of what, right? At the expense of the relationship
Yeah.
that I have with my parents. So after rationalizing with myself a few years back, I told myself that this is not something that I ideally want to sacrifice. Right?
Yeah.
And that's where moving out / going to finding your own home, right?
Yeah.
Is a good way to sort of like grow up and grow out.
Yeah. Okay. So, but was like any other considerations before you like moved out? Like, I know there was a period of time where I asked you like just move out, or that you were saying that like financially like you weren't quite there. There's some other things. So like, did you just click this time? Was it just a good time to move out for you?
Okay, so the thing about it is that like the pandemic further exacerbated the potential issues with living with my parents, right? Because with CB, with heightened alert, with work from home being default, and my parents being retired, a lot more potential friction and conflict points were created.
Yeah.
Not because we want to fight with each other, but because we're in each other's proximity more often.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Makes
No
sense.
choice.
I mean, natural.
Yeah. And the issue was that every time I thought about, I planned to move out, it was not financially sound lah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And this is even more obvious for me because like I think because I work in the media industry, right? As we all know, you know why are we doing here on YouTube, right? I work in the media industry, and the media industry is not one of the highest paying industries in Singapore, especially for middle management kind of situation lah. So for me, it made zero sense to move out if like my finances were not in order.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So eventually, after working for a few years, I managed to negotiate a good raise recently, and that hit a bracket that was comfortable enough for me to have a healthy amounts of savings while still renting and moving out at a certain amount of a certain range of budget.
Yeah. Is there like a
Right?
percentage that you're looking at before you pull the trigger, or is it just a feeling kind of thing?
Okay. I never calculate so down to percentage, but basically my budget would have been a comfortable 20%, for example.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
Right? And like maximum of a 20% is something that I thought would be a good like gauge. You know, of whether I can comfortably sustain it and still live a decent lifestyle.
Okay.
You know, and that's the whole trade-off. Coming up with a check and balance sheet in that sense.
Yeah.
To see whether you can afford this lifestyle change. It was one of those things that I did, and I realized that prior to this increment / raise / promotion thing, right, I didn't fulfill that.
So like you
Make sense?
did think about it before and you just went like, okay, realistically speaking, like
For those that know me, I have thought about it for years.
yeah. As in like you probably just like so you thought that like okay, realistically I want to live a certain lifestyle. I don't want to compromise on that, so I cannot afford rent
Yes.
right now. Okay.
Or rather, I have a limit of how much I will compromise on my lifestyle.
Okay.
Because like I do still want to be able to live enjoyably.
Like
You know what I mean?
comfortably lah. You don't have.
There's
yeah,
a
I
very
guess.
big difference between existing and living comfortably,
Okay. That's true.
right?
Yeah.
And that's where it's important. So you cannot be doing this at the expense of lifestyle. Not for me, at least. Different people have different priorities, right? Some people are able to do that. I know I wasn't able to.
Okay. So
it has come to like a point whereby I have managed to find a good in between, right? Something that is not only doable but also sustainable, you know, which is important.
But was it something that like you thought about for a long time? Because I know, okay, so like for example,
Yeah.
I moved out of my previous house. I moved into a new house. I didn't move out of
Yes.
with my family. I still living with my family, but basically I moved out like in December of last year. I remember my dad took like super long to like calculate the finances and like make sure that he could pay everything, and like there was like this weird like period of time there where everything has to happen, because if not he has to like pay extra taxes, etc. like that. So
Yeah.
the financial planning side of things was super important, like to the point where like it was like a really big stressor. So for you, like was the financial part something that you thought about long and hard about?
Okay, so I may not be as good of I'm nobody's financial planner, let's be fair about that. And I may not be as meticulous about it as your dad. Right? Who clearly has way more experience than myself.
Yeah.
But basically what happened was that for me, I did a little bit of planning, and one of the most important things which I'm just gonna put it out there and tell you the truth, but might sound a little bit exploitative, right? Is to find the right people to enact a plan around.
What do you mean by that?
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll elaborate on that. So the first things first is that I know that given the Singapore market, because I have friends who rent out, surveying the market and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
I have friends who rent out, searching on the internet and getting an average rate. If I live in a house on my own, not just a unit on my own, that's not something that I can afford.
Okay.
The cheap housing rental in Singapore, right? Low range of about 2K to 3K, right? It's quite hard to find.
Ooh, okay.
Okay, 220 to 3K rent a month. It's hard to find.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, you want to find something like that. You also want to find trustable housemates.
Yeah.
Of course, you
Of
can
course.
find those single bedroom and rent with strangers, but I knew that was not something that I wanted.
Because they wouldn't understand, when you stream and then you start screaming in the middle of the night.
Exactly. So that's something that I wanted to ideally avoid, right?
Yeah.
So that was the issue, right?
Okay.
And then what happened was that there was an opportunity in that sense within my friend group, right? And most of you will know Chow, right? Chow is someone who is a dear friend of mine, and also someone that I feel is like damn lucky that I have her in my life because she is very resourceful and extremely good at doing the things that I cannot typically execute.
Yeah.
She is a very good planner and executor.
She's very good at pulling things together out of nothing almost.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why I went into this housing situation managing my own finances, but trusting in her decision making for most of how everything happened. So if you talk about how this house came about, right?
Yeah.
Let's be very fair here. Okay.
Yeah.
It is, I'm just gonna put it's 100% Chow.
Okay.
And this is what I mean by picking the right friends to have. Because my contributions and stuff like that come slightly after and slightly differently.
Yeah.
Right? Like I'm quite a stickler for cleaning and maintenance, making sure that we have extra, making sure people are taken care of. But I'm not good at acquiring a place in the first place.
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
So as a result, the first thing that I did was to always find someone that I could ideally rely on to cover the gaps in my abilities.
When you were finding housemates, I mean, it just so happens that the housemates that you found were two people who you were rather close to. I mean, so I think that's a good thing. But for a lot of people who are out there, you won't always get the luxury of finding roommates that you are super close to or know super well. You might know them like acquaintances or something like that. You won't know them super well. I'm just wondering whether what are some of the considerations that you took into account when you're finding roommates? Cleanliness something that you thought about, was getting along something you thought about, or lifestyle or whatever something you thought about?
This is a good point because these are definitely things that I've thought about. So the first thing that I thought about, right, about housemates, right, is nothing of that sort. It was way more practical. It was whether these people were able to complement my skill set. Okay. Especially since most of these people that I was considering, there were about 5 of us that I was considering, right?
Okay.
I wanted them to at least be able to come together with me to discuss and execute.
Yeah, because house, I mean, to most people it's just
because
almost buying on Lazada, but it's not exactly just buying on Lazada. There's
it's not like that at all.
Yeah. I mean, you go more into exact processes later, but why don't you go into it? What's the process
I mean, okay, I'm still no expert because most of this I fall back onto Chow, but things like liaising with a property agent, right? And speaking to the agent to find out a little bit more about the details of your home, right? So this is where picking your friends become very important because you ideally firstly want to find someone with experience. Yeah. Right? So if this person does not have experience as a renter, for example, as a tenant, right? Find friends who have had experience as a tenant and ask them how they do it. So for example, even though most of the things here in terms of the acquisition of the house is settled by Chow, right? Certain things like getting a checklist to check whether the home is good and all that kind of thing, right? I did consult people like Hui and my other foreigner friends, who live in Singapore and as a result know the system better and know what to look out for in homes.
What are some of the things that you had to look out for, or they asked you to look out for?
Okay, I do have a short list here that I can pull up.
I mean, I think just like buying a house, it sounds. I mean, to people like me, maybe the younger audience out here who who I guess will one day move out, right? It sounds like it sounds like you're Minecraft and you just build a house and somehow you get there. And then
Yeah,
you don't
it's not that simple.
and you don't think about the finances too much. You know that it's expensive, but you don't know exactly how expensive it is. Because once you
Yeah.
start crunching the numbers, that's when you start to realize that like a lot of things you need to start compromising on. Then you start thinking like, oh, here's my dream house, right? Then you realize that, okay, maybe I cannot go there, no, not quite there. Then you have to like prioritize and you have
Yeah.
to understand which one to really take into account.
Exactly.
So what are some-
And the thing about it is that I'm not talking even about acquisition of a house. We're
just
renting.
Yeah. Even renting is
Think
tough.
about it. If let's say you talk about 2,000, 3,000, which is a good range, right?
Yeah.
Which is the cheap range, right? 2.5K. Let's use the middle.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
2.5K a month means what? 4 months 10K.
Mm.
1 year 30K.
30K, yep. Tough. A lot of money.
Can you ideally support that on your own? If you can, good for you. Then you are able to proceed all this on all this thing on your own. But most of the time, it is difficult to do it alone.
Yeah. And I mean, that's when like you start to like ask yourself like, okay, what are the things that I can like compromise on? So it's like, ideally you want your own house, but okay, cannot have your own house, then I'll have like roommates. I want it to be like right beside like an MRT, then it's like, okay, too damn expensive, then how far am I willing to go, that kind of thing. So it's really like how far you're willing to go kind of situation, I feel. Even though I technically haven't bought a house myself or anything like that, it's just from what I look at, how my family makes decisions. But for you, what are your what's your priority list of things to look out for in like a rental?
So the thing about it is that because you see, I came with this experience as a first time tenant, right?
Yeah.
Means I don't even know what I don't know.
That's true. Yeah.
Right? So I went to ask around and I realized that asking my foreigner friends will be the best way to deal with it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So like they mentioned about things like hidden fees.
Ooh,
right?
Okay.
But before we talk about fees, we talk about things like house condition when you check a house, right? You need to consider suddenly, which all these things I'm very sure, especially if you live with your parents, all these things you've never had to think about because your parents thank for you. So after this episode, please go and thank your parents. Things like direction. Which direction is the house facing?
Yeah, that's important.
Why is it important? Why?
If the sunlight, then it might be hot in the afternoon and shit. Yeah.
Yes. So you might have an idea about that, right?
Yeah.
But you never thought about whether they're deal breakers or not.
Exactly, because I think some people
Right?
are okay with it. Some people actually like it, but some people hate it. So it really depends. You have to like go there and see everything on. Yeah.
Yeah, and you've never thought about whether it's a deal breaker for you if it comes through a certain direction.
Yeah.
But it might be.
It might be.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And then like when you're checking out things like as a tenant, right? So these are the lists of things that Hui told me. Your toilets, right? Because they're not yours, you want to check whether it's shaky, stable.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's
Right?
true. You can't like redo
Next
it
one
also, right? That's the problem. Because you're renting it.
Sorry?
You can't like exactly redo it, right? Like because you're renting it.
You can't redo it. Okay, but the thing about it is that in you don't want to be paying for repairs. So most of the time with tenancy, we have this thing called minor repair cost. So they will they'll ask you to pay up basically if something spoil, they ask you to pay up to a cap.
Okay.
Then the rest the landlord settle.
Oh, okay. But all this will be within the contract itself, or something you have to take note lah.
Yes, this is all within the contract.
Okay.
So like next thing to take note of is things like aircon, for example. Singapore hot, right?
Yeah.
Most people want to use aircon for at least gas, right?
Aircon will be
sleep
nice,
aircon.
you know. Aircon will be nice.
Right? At least for gas, right?
Yeah.
Check your aircon model and when's the servicing.
Okay.
Which usually you stay in your parents' house, your parents do, right?
That's true lah. That's true. Yeah. That's true.
Wow.
And it's also not because like most of the time like if it's like I guess buying a house and you want to live long term in it, then people are more willing to buy like a more I guess lower condition one, then they just like upgrade it or renovate it. But especially if you're renting it, then I guess it makes more of an importance like the condition of the house and all these like minor like all these like repair things, because like you won't want to invest so much money into repairing and all that just so to live there for like a year or two and then like leave. So
correct.
I think it's something that like if you're renting, it's something that you might have to think about. I think it's a bit different from buying, because when we are buying, like we didn't even like we consider a little bit of condition, but it's not too big of a consideration. We just like ended up re-renovating everything. But I think when renting is something that you have to think about.
Yeah. And these are things that you never really consider. So things like, for example, washing machine and fridge.
Yeah.
Right? The house will come and be, right? Can use or not? Bro's not. Just now Chow was around, right? During stream, we were talking
yeah.
about things like tub cleaning, right?
Yeah.
You must always do a first clean, right?
Yeah.
And just now she talked about buying a new kettle because yesterday I went to check out the kettle and the kettle was, forgive my French, the old kettle was fucked. Right?
Yeah.
Then what do? Buy a new kettle.
Okay.
But ideally, you want all these things to you indicate before you move in, so you can just tell the agent or the landlord and be like, "Hey, your kettle's fucked."
Okay, fair enough.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But with regards to like, okay, I've always wondered like a lot of people have been talking about like the tenant and landlord like relationship. Like you must have a good relationship with your landlord, and not like will be a little bit difficult if you don't, and all that. I mean, you haven't exactly moved in for a long time, but is it something that you thought about as well, like how the landlord is like?
I have. Yeah, I really have thought about it. But I think the thing about relationship with landlord in Singapore, because we're very pragmatic, there are only a few things that you need to take care and the landlord will leave you alone. Things like paying your rent on time.
Yes.
And not fucking shit up in the house.
Yeah, second one is quite important.
Yeah. So I think most units in Singapore, I would say, when it comes to rental, right? Electricity is separate from your rental bill.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
So like most of the time, in Singapore, landlord won't be complaining about you using up their electricity or their utilities. Most of the time.
Right? Yeah.
Depends on the contract, right?
Yeah.
But for my place, I can say it's, separate. So we own self-settle.
Yeah.
Landlord will bill us the electricity we use, which is fine. It's fine, right? But the thing about it is that like maintaining a good relationship with your landlord is also important, because you do want to make sure that they know that you live here, you're the tenant. As much as this is your home, you also respect them as it's their place.
Yeah. I think it's something that is quite important, because I remember I was ideating for an article actually just regarding this about renting out a place, and that was one of the things that like that was brought up by the people who were renting out places, and say that like, oh, actually the landlord relationship is quite important, and the electricity bills also, like they were saying that like should probably try to check whether or not the electricity bill is covered within the rental cost, and whether or you need to pay extra. All these other things will matter as well. So
it does matter.
Yeah, but I mean, going back to like the moving out, because you moved out from your parents' place and everything, like one part of moving out is also telling your parents you're moving out, and I think a lot of people don't exactly like know how to do that. / they maybe their parents won't be exactly very welcoming of their idea, or very accepting of their idea. Like personally, how do your parents react to it? And like, okay, to other people like out there, like they who want to tell their parents they want to move out, like how would you go about doing? How would you go about doing
I would say that as a significantly older millennial than most of our audience.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
Right. I'm just gonna put it out there that at this point of time, the most important consideration when doing all these things, right, is your planning and your finances first. Okay? If you're very clear about your planning, very clear about your finances, and very clear about your decision making, and you're able to present these three facts to your parents, this cushions the conversation so much more.
That's true, because you know what you're doing.
Because and because most parents, let's face it, in Asian society, as harsh as they can be, as strict as they can be, it comes from a place of concern.
Yeah, they're just concerned that you are messing things up.
Right?
Yeah.
As toxic as they can be, it comes from a place of concern.
Yeah.
Or at least a part of them is concerned about you.
Yeah.
Right? Because you are their children. So one thing that you want to do is you got to be able to convince them that you are, even if you're not knowing what you're doing, you're at least using this to grow up sustainably.
Yeah.
Which I think is very important. Because all parents want is you to be happy and to grow up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? But you must be able to pitch them why it's safe for them to let go.
That's true. Yeah. I think you just need to show like a level of maturity.
Sorry?
You need to show like a level of maturity so that like they will like be able to trust your decision making as well.
Yeah. And the best analogy really is like you imagine an adult leading their children to cross the road. Right? If you're a toddler, we'll always hold hands. Right?
Yeah.
Until your parents feel that they drill enough trust and adulthood into you to cross the road yourself.
Yeah.
Same here. right? You want to walk at your own speed, you need to let go, right? But you must show to your parents that you can cross the road on your own.
Yeah. And that comes with you have to do your due diligence yourself as well. It's
absolutely.
not a trust
you must be able to go, if you're going into a conversation with your parents, you must have the facts and figures prepared. Right? I was a little bit idealistic, naive the first time I wanted to bring the conversation up. Right?
Okay.
So much so that because of the amount of trust that I put into child, let me just admit that there were some things that I just completely didn't think about finding out on my own.
Like?
Which were things like, oh, do I want to come and measure my room? Do I want to come and make sure what was what, or that kind of thing? Because I was busy, and then I was just like, oh, busy with work. Chow, what do you think? Okay, go with it. You know, that's not the right move to make. Yeah. After some reflection and thinking about myself, then I think to myself, why shouldn't I? Why shouldn't I be the one that's doing it? You know, I need to take ownership. I need to take responsibility and accountability for my own space. And I realized that was the kind of thinking that was the epiphany moment in that sense for how I ought to have that conversation with my parents.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
To show them that I do know what I'm getting myself into. To show them that I do know all the details, what I'm doing because it helps me to become better.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And that is how the conversation ought to go, because most of the time it's difficult to have this kind of conversations with your parents.
You should very
go
difficult.
Into the conversation. Yeah. Go into the conversation with your facts prepared. Firstly, things like, how big is this new house you're moving into? Right? Do you even know the difference between square foot, square meter?
Actually, right, you'll be surprised how people don't know. I think it's not as obvious of a ish.
No, but you see, this is where it's tough, because I can bet my bottom dollar that every single parent in Singapore knows it at the back of their hand. Yep.
It's like, if you ask me, still for now, square foot, square meter, you ask me to convert, I don't know how to convert. But I ask my dad right now, he'll be able to convert on the spot for you.
No, it's not even convert, you know. You cannot even envision. If I give you a figure now, right? My house, 750 square feet, for example.
Yeah.
Which one bigger? 750 square meter or 750 square feet?
Meters. Is it? Oh, fucking no idea. I think it's meters. Meters bigger.
Difficult to answer, right?
Meters bigger.
Leave it in the chat. Leave it in the comments below if you know, but I don't want to tell you. But basically, it's this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right? If you cannot even go to your parents and have this kind of honest answer to them, how are they going to trust you?
Yeah. And I think recently I also had a conversation with my parents about me, I said okay, I want to eventually move out one day lah. Not now, not within the next not in the recent future, I guess, but eventually one day I want to move out. And
of course. Eventually one day you will have to move out.
I mean, it depends on your family. Some people just live with their parents the whole time, which is fine also. It just depends on how your family is run. But for me personally, I would like to move out, at least for a little bit of time, just so that I can be independent. And hopefully by then I'll be married already. Then you can spend time with my wife a bit more and everything, and have that privacy that I think that I would need to grow, especially as a couple or as a family lah. But I was talking to my parents about it, and then they started asking me questions financially, do I know what I'm doing? Is this you do know what you're getting yourself into? Then I realized that I really don't. Zero idea. Had no idea. Then my parents had to my dad had to sit me down and tell me okay. Because we were looking at let's say if you want to buy a house, you have to look at housing loans, you have to look at how much money can you even borrow from the bank, how much money do you have in the first place, how much of your CPF can you use, how much of CPF cannot use, that kind of shit, and all these things, right, you won't even consider, because to you it's my parents bought this XXX amount of house, say 1.6 million, let's say, and then you think okay, if anything below 1.6 million is should be can, because my parents did it, when you realize that actually fucking expensive. You really cannot afford it.
It's not that simple.
It's not that simple.
It's really not that simple.
It's really not that
simple. This is where I feel that if you want to consider home ownership, even if it's a rental tenancy kind of situation, it forces you to, for the lack of a better word, to really grow up all at once.
It's true.
It just comes this tipping point where you're suddenly forced to step out of the illusion that your parents have created for you and
Yeah.
grow up all at once.
Yeah, then you realize that like, because I mean, especially if you let's say looking to BTO, then you see like all my friends like they come out of uni, they can BTO already, and like wow, how they afford this, yeah. And then you start to think like, oh, I should be able to afford it as well. Then you start crunching the numbers, then you realize you really can't, and you like, oh no, okay, I need to reconsider my life plan, because a lot of people are like, oh, right after uni, I want to move out straight away, and then you start thinking like, oh, I confirm can move out because everyone does it. And then you start to think, actually, maybe I cannot. I had to like maybe work for 5 years. And then you have to start calculating like, okay, like here's the lifestyle I want. Here's the amount that I need to pay, like down payment at least. And then all these things need to consider. And so it's a lot more complicated than you would think. But my advice would be to go and talk to your parents about it. And even if you don't really know exactly, you can try to find out a little bit more. But at least for my dad, like my dad is I would say a very good financial planner. So there were like nights where like for like 1 or 2 hours he'll just sit me down and talk to me about like SIBOR, SORA, all the stupid like interest rates schemes in like banks and bank loans and housing loans and shit like that. Just so that I understand when I'm like talking to banks and like understand what's going on. So I think parents are a good source of information for this as well.
Parents are a very good source of information, but they may also be the most difficult source to stomach.
It's true.
So one thing that you can try to do is as you get older and as you get to the stage whereby you start to consider home ownership, right? We don't talk about things like tenancy. Tenancy, I think, is relatively easier compared to things like home ownership. Consult friends who already own a home.
Yeah, I think I think friends will be a lot, I guess, easier to step into. They probably won't tell you. They might not tell you everything because like maybe they're just friends, so they won't tell you the like the nitty-gritty details. But I think maybe the parents will be, but at least when you go to the parents, you won't be as lost. You won't be like, hey, what's this? What's housing loan? Need housing loan? That kind of thing. Like at least settle the basics, of what it takes to be a tenant / a house owner, and then you talk to your parents. I think they'll give you the high level tips and tricks, of what to look out for. But I think generally, like, I think especially now there's like this like trend towards house, like either moving out renting or house ownership at a very young age. Like I don't know, like maybe it's our circle of friends, but like my circle of friends, a lot of people have moved out already. A lot of people want to move out. So whether is it renting or they have their own house, but I don't know. Like, did you feel the pressure to move out personally?
No.
Okay. So for you, just biding your
For
own
me,
time,
my consideration has always been cost.
Okay.
Right. So prior to negotiating a raise in the company, I have resolved in myself that I couldn't afford it. But once I could, I became a little bit more aggressive in my approach towards how I could get a space of my own. Even if it's like not the biggest space, but it's fine by me.
Yeah. I mean, your house, it does. I mean, I'm going to cut to like just a white shot of him right now, but it looks alright. It looks like quite a big space. I think it's fine.
It's bigger than my previous space.
It is. It's quite a bit bigger actually.
It's bigger. It's just a little bit bigger, but like it's also nothing to shout about.
I mean, it's fine. Is there something that you thought about?
Like,
Is that something you thought about? Like, did you mind that it was a smaller space?
No, I do not. In fact, that one of the lucky things about myself is that like I do like small, cozy spaces.
Okay. I mean, to some people that might be a deal breaker, I guess.
It might be a deal breaker. So I think these are things to consider as well. And it's also difficult to say for sure.
I think you have to go down.
That's why. Yes. No, it's not only that. I say it's difficult to say for sure because not only must you go down and see, you must come down and live.
That's true. That's true.
You must have experienced it to know. So one of those things about considering moving out, be it in terms of rental or home ownership, is to be very clear about what you can compromise on and what you can't.
Yes.
Right? So things like, for example, how important is availability of public transport to you?
That's true. Yeah.
Right? How important west side, east side, north side, south side, central is that to you? Those are things that you've never thought about.
You never had to think about it.
Living in one place.
Yeah, exactly. You never had to think about it. Yeah.
Correct. So these are things that you have, ideally, if you rationalize all these things early in your life, you will not have a little bit of a easier time when you're trying to find a place of your own.
Yeah. And I mean, I think like now we have considered a lot of like the bigger problems, like the financial part, the housemates, the landlords, the
Yeah.
I guess the parents, I guess is one of the considering factors as well. But I was just curious, like, were there any like small stupid things that like you never had to consider, but you realize that are like low key important? I don't know, like suddenly you have to buy on toilet paper, that kind of level of stupid things.
Oh no, personally, I found I serendipitously discovered that I have a lot of I would say money habits that I'll need to change, but positive habits that are very beneficial when I move out.
Okay, like
One good example, which Chow always complains to me about, I like to buy a whole bunch of things like wet wipes and dry wipes and dry tissue paper, for example.
okay.
Whole bunch, as in I buy a box.
Like wholesale kind. Okay.
I buy like 8 at once.
Okay.
In my head,
weird, but sure.
redundancy is always good.
Sure.
Which served to my advantage because very quickly we could have things like wet wipe, dry wipe.
Okay.
Right? Mopping systems that I learned from home. Right? Which are ridiculously strict. Watered down version suddenly become very useful.
Okay, that's true. Okay.
So that's where I serendipitously discovered that a lot of these habits allowed me to exist in a space without tripping up too much.
Yeah. I mean, what are some of the things you have to adjust to though? You said you have some financial decisions or things
So
that you do.
So far, right, the only major thing that I have to adjust to was finances.
Okay.
Because you think about it, if let's say I lose 20% of my income every month, that's like contributing another CPF.
That's true. Yeah.
Right? So am I ready for that?
So
right?
Do you have to like what have you recently stopped yourself from buying?
Oh, very simple. It's very simple. Eat cheaper, grab less.
Okay. So that's the big lifestyle change lah.
Let's be real here. These two are not big lifestyle changes. Secondly, these two are bad habits.
It's true lah. I do think that.
I mean, to all of y'all watching on YouTube right now, let's be real here, okay? Let's be very real here, okay? No matter how young and old you are, okay? Eating expensive food and calling Grab, be it for deliveries or transport.
Yeah.
They're just bad habits.
Yeah.
Singapore, firstly, right?
Yeah.
Cheap and good food is, pardon my French, every fucking where.
Yeah, everywhere.
Honestly, let's put it out there. Honestly, if you're the average Joe or average Jane,
or Jane, who knows?
any cai fan you find,
it's good. Nice. It's true lah. Even if it's bad, right? It's like decent lah. It's like fine, It's like even the worst cai fan, which I have.
Already, you puke out, man.
You won't puke it. You will be fine. It's fine. It's like very serviceable. It's like army cai fan. It's like serviceable.
Exactly.
It's like fine. You can live.
You could have a very, very good, decent meal.
Yeah.
For $2.50.
True. You can.
Next, transport. I mean, the both of us, we can cover a lot. At Leicester Space, one bus only. Got bus? Go or not?
Got bus.
God. And our country, how big? Our country, mother tiny.
You can. That's the thing. But I think, these things that you have to I guess slowly adjust to because suddenly you got extra finances And even if you're buying, let's say even if you're buying a house, part of your monthly income will go towards housing loans and housing loans often aren't that cheap. In fact, they're quite expensive. So these are still things that you have to consider even if you aren't renting, even if you are still having housing loans.
Yeah.
But
sure.
Yeah, I agree. I mean,
but you must understand. Okay, I mean, I'm sorry to interject because you did bring up about housing loans, right? Which is basically the mortgage situation that people have when they are homeowners.
Yeah.
Okay, if you're a rental, if you're a tenant, right, doing a rental, you must understand that this money, essentially disappears into the oblivion.
It's like don't know
as compared to some people who got a BTO, right? Who have found their partner and able to find a BTO early on, that kind of thing, right? My rent, right?
Yeah.
Could cover their mortgage.
It might, yeah.
It might, right?
I think it will actually.
So that's one of those long-term costs you have to consider as well. Because if you're going to do a tenancy, tenant, rent,
yeah,
you don't own the place.
That's true, because you don't, at the end of it, after like 10 or 20 years or whatever, you don't get to say that it's yours and sell it and we earn your investment. Yeah, that's why a lot of people are even considering like renting / waiting for a BTO or whatever. So it really just depends. It depends on the situation as well.
So most of the time in Singapore, when it comes to Singaporeans, rental is never the long-term solution. It might be the pit stop, but it's never the long as in 5 years and more.
So is that what your mindset is now? It's like, this might be for now, but within like...
So for me, the lifestyle changes and all the tightening of the belts and everything, it's in order for me to save up eventually to make a housing purchase.
Okay.
But that's the
whole different
tough,
episode.
Right? That's very tough.
Yeah.
Right? And like it's even tougher so now that I pay two times CPF a month.
Yeah. I mean that's a whole other episode about like financial planning. If you guys want an episode about that, to be honest, we're not the best people, but we invite someone else to come on the show to talk a little bit more about that. I'm not sure you guys are interested. I think most of our people are just interested in the, at least from what I see, the more emotional side of things. So just to end it off, final ones. Emotionally, where are you at right now? Now that you're in your
emotionally, I'm just gonna put it out there that I think I'm still like improving, right? And like I mentioned to people who are watching on our Twitch, so those of you who haven't subscribed, twitch.tv/overthink.
Yes.
Tonight filming here is the first time I'm filming here. It's also the first time I'm sleeping here, and it's been less than a week since I moved in here.
Yeah.
So I'm still finding my footing, but so far there has been a net positive in my experience.
That's good.
And I think that's what matters.
Yeah. It's most a bit surreal, isn't it?
It's very surreal that I'm in my own place, but also most of the time the considerations are to live a happy life. Then if that is what we hold most dear, then no matter the cost, it's worth it.
All right.
Idealistic and romantic as shit, but in the kind of life we live in, I think living purely for your own happiness in a sustainable way is not emphasized enough.
Yeah. Sustainable also another key important point. But with that, John, I think we've come to the end of today's episode. It's a little bit different. I think it's mostly John is sharing his experiences. If one day I move out, I will share mine as well. But for now, I think, John, if like in a year or so, maybe you can come back and we will redo this episode because you have
can do an AR.
You can do an AR because for now it's whatever he has learned from his week and from his whole experience so far in the last month or so. So with that, John, any other last final words before we say goodbye to our YouTube frogs?
Stay strong, stay safe, and hang in there for those of you that are still planning. I know it's daunting that we mentioned that you have to grow up all at once, but like that's how growing up in general works. You know, every time you hit a new checkpoint, you have to grow up all at once. Just how much?
Yeah, and I think I mean there are people around you who are supporting you as well. They're friends and
I'm very lucky.
Yeah.
But you know, not everyone is as lucky as I am. So make your own luck and do more research, be more prepared.
Yeah. And with that, guys, thank you guys so much for watching today's episode. Do let us know if you enjoyed this more chill, more interviewee type topics, more our own experiences type topics. That's a little bit more, I would say slow, not really slow. I don't know. It's a bit more feely than normal.
Yeah.
But let us know if you guys enjoy it. We'll do more such episodes and more perspective-like episodes. Thank you guys so much. Stay safe. Don't get COVID. See you guys next week. Bye.
Bye.